Domenico Veneziano painted the Adoration of the Magi. Little is known of his life or the facts surrounding his paintings, but it's known that he permanently settled in Florence. Although he had a line of fresco paintings lined up at the Hospital of Santa Maria Nuova, when those were completed, he found himself without any work to do. Because of this, Veneziano wrote in a now famous letter in 1438 thanking the Medici house for all the fortunes they brought to him and begging the head of the Medici house, Piero de' Medici, if he could paint an altarpiece for him. Although Veneziano was unsuccessful in his request, he was still able to work with many artists, and together they produced many paintings for the Medici family, including the Adoration of the Magi.
Adoration of the Magi, also known as the Adoration of the Kings, represents the Bible story of Matthew 2:11 and the Nativity of Jesus in art, where the three Magi, represented as kings, have found Jesus by following a star. Occasionally, from the 12th century on, the Magi are also made to represent the three known parts of the world. Balthazar is very commonly cast as a young African or Moor, and old Caspar is given oriental features and dress. Melchior represents Europe and Middle Age.
He paints in emblems of the Medici family members, for example, the falcon representing Piero de' Medici, and the peacock representing Giovanni di Cosimo de' Medici.
This work demonstrates Domenico's contact with courtly taste and the persistence of late Gothic interest in nature. Some of the attendants have Gothic lettering embroidered in gold on the borders of their clothing. In contrast to the elaborate costumes of the two standing kings and the man in the back, the kneeling king has plain clothing. A page holds his crown so that his bald head is juxtaposed with the halo worn by Christ.
We talked in class about how the St. Lucy altarpiece that Veneziano also painted was playing with the linear perspective. Although his version of the Adoration has a less playful handle with the linear perspective, you can tell that he still puts value in it and uses it, using the far mountains in the center of the piece as the vanishing point, and the roads and city walls leading up to it as its orthogonals. Although the transversals in this piece are much harder to tell, you can see how the mountains are receding further and further back into the piece in a rational manner. The painting combines the Venetian taste for ornamented fabrics as well as a naturalistic perspective that contrasts from the Adoration that Gentile had painted several years back. Not only is the blue sky an example of this, but the prime example is his solid handle of foreshortening. Gentile's version of the Adoration shows a crowded space in the foreground and the background. However, Veneziano opens up the background using rolling hills, fields, and a walled city, showing shepherds and sheep walking around. By doing so, Veneziano was able to show that everyday life can continue regardless of any miraculous event happening in the foreground. Lastly, an interesting aspect of Veneziano's painting we can look at is the shape and positioning. When you compare Veneziano's positioning of people in comparison to Gentile's, you can see that they are horizontal mirrors of each other. In order to further emphasize that he mirrored the previous version, Veneziano paints the Adoration in a circular shape, representing a literal mirror.